John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both had the same thing to say about the NFC Championship game. All due respect to the Eagles, really well-built team. They just wish, the 49ers just wish that something so freakish as this Brock Purdy injury hadn't happened so that the Niners could have been afforded a real chance to compete with that team. Not whatever they got next year, but this team, that they were robbed of an opportunity to compete. And we just wish that in this alternate universe they could have. And to which I want to say, hold on. It wasn't just one fluke injury to one quarterback, man. Philly knocked out both your quarterbacks in about 2.5 quarters. The way I look at it is, if Philly wouldn't have knocked out Brock Purdy on that first drive, they probably would have knocked him out at some point in that game because they knocked out Josh Johnson too. It wasn't fluky. Your offensive line got freaking manhandled. And Kyle Shanahan doesn't really prioritize protecting quarterbacks. So the gap between Philly and the Niners, to me, is that while the Niners, they're very similar teams, but while the Niners have a bunch of weapons on offense, so does Philly. But the strength of Philly's offense is their offensive line, while the weakness of the Niners' offense is their offensive line. And until they can turn that weakness into a strength, they're just not as good as Philly. Philly has Lane Johnson at right tackle. The Niners have Mike McGlinchey. Philly has Jason Kelsey at center. The Niners have Jake Brendel. That's not going to cut it. I don't have a question for you. You can say whatever you want to say. That's my rant. To me, that's the gap right there. And when they're sitting there saying, like, we wish we had an opportunity, well, if you had a better offensive line, you might have had an opportunity.
I think, absent of the quarterback, which obviously was the one that ultimately decided the factor, that offensive and defensive line matchup between both sides really was, like, the deciding factor, like, hugely. And it wasn't even close. I mean, 49ers can pass protect. That does become easier to go after the quarterback more relentlessly against a Josh Johnson than it does a Brock Purdy. But maybe Brock Purdy, all he needs to do is make several throws like he did against the Cowboys to really make you pay. And then you start rethinking, okay, what's going on here? Because it's not like Jalen Hurts was really throwing, which is why the Eagles won in the first place. The offensive line, even though Hurts was pretty bad that game, they were able to execute beautiful blocks to allow the run game open, to allow just enough passes for Hurts to execute to keep drives going. That's really where it was just like, wow, I've never seen the Niners since 2019 for the last 3-4 years get so dominated on both sides of the trenches, because they're usually the team that goes out there first and punches you in the mouth. And it kind of almost reminded me a little bit like last year when the defensive line was struggling against the Rams offensive line, and the 49ers offensive line couldn't really hold up too much well against the Rams. Except this one was on a different level. There's it's also funny that you mentioned like how Lynch and Kyle were just saying like pretty much, and I think I'm gonna paraphrase it. It's like they're lucky Purdy got injured because we're probably winning that game. That's pretty much what they said. The way I think.
It's like lucky Purdy got injured. They knocked out both of your quarterbacks before the end of the third quarter. Like that was dude. Like if that was a UFC fight, like they broke your jaw and your. Like that was terrible what happened. That was vicious. I had to look away from the screen. Like that was NC-17. It was rated R. It's bad what you let the Eagles do to you because you were not equipped to fight with them in the trenches on either side of the ball. Either side. So the D-line has to get better too. I'm not going to call out anyone by name. It wasn't just one person. But frankly, the entire D-line got dominated by that Philly offensive line. And the entire Niners offensive line got dominated. The best dude on the Niners offensive line, Trent Williams, may have been the reason that those play action passes weren't fooling anyone early in the game. Go back and look. He's doing the same thing. He doesn't care. And Chris Forrester even told him, he's like, look, I talked to him about it. He's like pleading with Trent Williams, can you please stop tipping the plays? And Trent's like, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to win my one-on-one matchups. PFF's going to give me a high grade, and no one's going to criticize me. But meanwhile, why is Hassan Reddick not honoring the run fake? I don't know. Boy, it's one of those things.
They're probably just telling them just to fire off and just go because we rather you because it's more. And this is the thing I was saying last week of the game plan of the Niners. Like, hey, if they run that read option with Jalen Hurts, don't crash into the running back. Crash into Jalen Hurts because most likely that Miles Sanders is going to gas you for just 1 to 4 yards.
Yeah.
Versus and you're better off staying home and setting the edge for that breakout. But yeah, I think they were just because there was other times after that game where it looked like damn, Reddick's just shooting in there. He doesn't care. Like, it doesn't matter what it was. Like, was run play or not, he was just shooting in there. That guy was, like, firing off like a freaking bullet. Yeah, it's just. I mean, this kind of was the game that was supposed to be expected, right? It was going to be aggressive as hell between both lions. It's just who was going to really outlast the other, and it was kind of shocking to see how much of a mismatch. Especially, it really was, especially 49ers defensive line versus Eagles defensive line. I did not think it was going to go anywhere near as that bad, because even as bad as it was against Dallas, it wasn't like it was so. It wasn't like it was so abysmal. It wasn't like it was so hopeless. Like there were still chances for them. But the Eagles, I mean, man, can you blame them? They have Pro Bowl and All-Pro talent top to bottom.
Well, I think what's funny about the Niners is they say they're committed to winning in the trenches, but they're not. They have half an offensive line. They're good on the left side. They're always good on the left side.
Yeah.
Always good on the left side. When have they had a good right side of their offensive line since Kyle's been here? Never. It's McGlinchey and a guard who's worse than him. And like sometimes they have a good center, and then sometimes it's freaking Jake. Well, Jake Brendle's not bad, but it's like Philly, meanwhile, has just a complete the best offensive line in the league. And the deepest pass rush their D line is crazy. Has 6 first-round picks on the D line. Like, they're not messing around. Where the Niners are paying lip service to it. We got Nick Bosa and Trent Williams. We'll fill in the rest from there. I don't know if that's even good enough. I mean, you do have 2 of the best in the league, but that's not enough. Got to do better. Yeah, you got to replace Mike McGlinchey. You got to do better than Mike McGlinchey and Samson Ebukam. You got to be at the freaking, Josh Sweat and Lane Johnson level over there. You got to be that good.
I don't know why.
What are you going to do?
I kept thinking, like, God, the Niners, if they had DJ Jones, would have been so sweet in that game.
DJ Jones would have been key. He was so good. He's really important, and they lost him. Well, now they got to replace him. Clea Davis, let's move on.